Hi guys, this is Hiro. What's up? Today, I'm going to be talking about the new moon that's happening in Scorpio, okay? Now, this is important for three reasons. Why? One, obviously, you can tell is that the moon is debilitated. Two, that the sun has a very interesting role in this as well, more than usual, okay? I'm going to get to that in a bit too. And three, it's the sun and moon's placement in a couple certain divisional charts, which I'll get to in a second later, okay? So, first, let's start off with the sun. Why is the sun here important, okay? Whenever there's a new moon or a full moon, the moon always gets all the attention and love, okay? But why is the sun important here? Well, if you look at all the signs, the sun gets exalted in Aries, right? Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars has two signs. It's Aries and Scorpio. So sun is in Mars's other sign. Now, when it comes to any planet in general, most of the planets have two signs it rules, okay? It has a Mooltrikona sign and it just has another regular own sign, okay? Now, you could say that the own sign, the non-Mooltrikona sign, the planet kind of uses that sign to fulfill the agenda to an extent of the Mooltrikona sign, okay? So for example, Venus uses Taurus to fulfill Libra's agenda, okay? You can call it. Or just like here, Mars uses Scorpio to fulfill the agenda of Aries, okay? So assuming we go based off of that premise, Sun really wants to help fulfill Mars' agenda of Aries. Why? Because Sun gets exalted in Aries. Okay, so Sun is in Scorpio right now. Right now, what does this mean? Well, I already talked about this a little bit in my Sun and Mercury in Scorpio video, but you could say that when Sun is in Aries, it gets exalted. Why? Because the Sun is the identity. It loves new changes. Okay. When it's in Scorpio, it's forced to be kind of intuitive about what changes it should make, okay? Which is not necessarily what its favorite thing to do is, but it'll do it. Okay, because why? It wants to eventually, Mars and Sun are friends. It wants to eventually help Mars achieve its final agenda, okay? And this is kind of where you have to look at the planets as like energetic entities, right? Not like calculations like, oh, this here equals this, plus this here equals, should be 70% this. No, you have to look at it kind of as like, you know, a full energy story, right? So Sun is in Scorpio. It's been in Scorpio for a little while, and it's trying, it's attempting to be more intuitive to see what changes it should make, right? And it's with Mercury as well. And also Ketu, which is also very powerful. So Ketu does very well in Scorpio as it's like it's a very spiritual kind of detachment planet. And Mercury's kind of the rational intelligence here. So what does this mean? From like a sun standpoint, it kind of means, okay, if you're using this energies properly, you could kind of see, okay, what energies or what changes should I make intuitively that are going to be great? And because it's a water sign, what things can I cut out? Especially because Ketu represents detachment too, right? So what's an example here? This could mean cutting out alcohol or meat or anything you shouldn't be doing, like watching a whole lot of TV or spending a bunch of time on your phone that you shouldn't, or hanging around these people that you shouldn't, or doing this, doing that, etc. You guys get what I mean, right? Now, so that's the sun, okay? Like I said, here what you want to do is you just want to let go of any external expectations you have, okay? Because you're going to want to be intuitive, and when you do that, you're forced to cut out a lot of things, and a lot of those things you cut out are going to hamper your material desires, right? Like, for example, if you cut out meat and alcohol, for example, you're going to be less able to enjoy kind of evenings out with certain people. Okay, it's just an example. Now, Moon comes in. Okay, Moon gets exalted in Taurus. Moon represents the mind. So Sun represents kind of the identity. Moon represents the mind. Okay, so the identity is already right here. We have the identity is forced to be more intuitive. The mind, Moon, And I'm going to make a separate video, full-length video on kind of, you can say, the journey of the sun and moon, okay? But at a glance, I'm gonna describe for you a little bit. The moon gets exalted in Taurus, right? The mind, it represents stability, okay? You could also look at this as the sun represents masculine energy and the moon represents feminine energy, right? Or in ancient kind of Hindu mythology or Indian mythology, the sun represents king and the moon represents queen, right? So the moon, it loves stability. It does not like instability, which is what Scorpio represents, right? That's one. Two, but like I said, the moon instability, being unstable, it could teach you a lot of things. Okay, so that's why I don't like the terms debilitated and not debilitated, or debilitated and exalted as coined as being good or bad. Okay, they all have their own flavors for us spiritually. Okay, now I also don't like how full moon and new moon are coined good and bad also, right? Because it's just a part of the cycle. Here's what I mean. The moon kind of has a cycle every month, just like kind of how a queen or a woman would have a cycle every month, okay? Now, in general, like I said, the sun represents the king and the moon represents the queen. So when it gets closer and closer to the sun, it kind of feels like restricted or constricted, okay? Why? Because it has to listen to whatever the sun wants to do, okay? That's why when any planet gets combust with the sun, it's like the king's there. You have to stop whatever you're doing and follow whatever the king says, okay? So the moon, when it's in Scorpio, it feels two things. It feels, one, constricted or restricted because it's close to the sun. And then two, it feels very unstable because it's in Scorpio, okay? This is not the moon's most favorite thing in the world from a material standpoint. Why? Because when the moon gets closer to the sun, for example, if in olden times I'm talking about, okay, not now, in olden times, when a woman would kind of, unite or get closer to a man, they would feel more restricted in olden times because in general, the women were a little bit more submissive to the man, okay? But in turn, the woman would feel very stable because the man would provide certain things like protection and everything else that a man would have provided in olden times, okay? Emphasis on olden times. So here, the moon is not really feeling too hot here because it's feeling the same constricted it gets when being close to the king, but it also feels very unstable at the same time. Okay, so this is not super ideal. Okay, now what was I gonna say? So now, what do we do about this, right? And especially because Ketu is right around the corner, a little bit behind. It feels very lost, right? So what we do here is that, like I said, from a material, as far as the sun kind of feeling some type of way in Scorpio, like I said, just detach from all external expectations, okay? But the moon is in a very, very interesting spot. And like I said, a new moon is not necessarily bad, okay? It's all part of the cycle. Just like how women have a cycle, okay? There's all aspects of that cycle are very important. Okay, if you look at it biologically, okay, they all have their own functions. Just like here, it has its own functions, okay? And when there's a full moon, it feels more free, just like your mind feels more expansive. And when there's a new moon, it feels a little bit more like, oh man, like what do I have to do, okay? But they all have their different flavors on growing us spiritually, right? But in this situation, it's a new moon and it's in Scorpio, right? So it feels constricted as well as unstable. So what does this mean? Okay, normally, in general, whenever there's a new moon, that means you feel kind of constricted. You want to go ahead and focus on stability, okay? So you want to kind of focus on the especially kind of the things you're grateful for in your life, okay? Now, when the moon is unstable or in debility, but it's not a new moon, it's just a regular, going through Scorpio, kind of, it's not necessarily restricted, but it's unstable. So what you want to do is you kind of want to see what intuitive spiritual depths that we can dive into. Okay, but in this instance, it feels unstable, but at the also time, it feels very restricted as well. So what does this mean? The best thing to do here in this kind of situation is acceptance. And what do I mean? The mind is kind of going to show you in these kind of situations exactly how powerless you can feel, okay? Because it's restricted and it's unstable. It's all over the place, but whenever it kind of wants to do something like that will super help you out, it feels constricted from the sun, okay? So we're gonna want to accept anything that our mind throws at us, okay? So this includes accepting all fears, okay? Don't try to fight it. Definitely don't try to do anything external to fix it, because the sun is already not in a hot spot as well either, okay? Like I said, I would just focus on just accepting kind of how ugly the mind can get, or how tough the mind can make it for you, okay? And as well as kind of think of, because they're both in Scorpio, and after moon passes the sun, it's going to start going into the Gandanta Point, right? At throughout the 4th, it'll kind of start to travel there. And I think the 5th, it kind of crosses over, or something along this timeline if you live in the US. So you kind of want to start thinking about, so the ego has been in Scorpio for a while, right? It's kind of been forced to see, okay, what kind of stuff should we let go? Now that the mind joins it as well, your mental emotional page is really on board of, okay, you know what, we should really go ahead and fully detach from this kind of stuff, okay? So like right now, let's just say you've been thinking about letting go of alcohol, because sun's in Scorpio. When moon gets there, you'll learn to fully emotionally detach from alcohol and all the experiences that come with alcohol, stuff like that. This is just an example, okay? I'd focus on that after the sun, mainly more after the moon passes the sun and gets more and more closer to that Gandanta point, okay? When moon kind of gets towards the end of Scorpio, okay? That will be a very powerful time as well, because the Gandanta point between Scorpio and Sagittarius is kind of the most infamous, okay? They're all important, but that's the most highlighted. Why? Because there's 4 major spiritual signs or houses conventionally in astrology, okay? They're all spiritual, but there's ones that are just super like hyped up, and that's the 5th, 8th, 9th, and the 12th, okay? 8th and 9th are the only 2 in a row, and they both happen to be water and fire, like 8 and 9. And moon happens to get debilitated in Scorpio, and the sun is there, well, kind of helping it out. And Ketu's there too, adding its own effect. So slight effect because it's a little farther, but it's still there adding its effect. So what this means is that we want to, after the moon before the moon passes the sun, you're going to see kind of how ugly the mind can get, okay? You're just going to kind of want to accept. Do not try to control, especially externally, okay? But even internally, do not try to control. Just let it flow, okay? Just realize this is what the mind is capable of. The mind is not me. I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I'm not my mind, okay? But anything I do try to resist or suppress will just end up sticking around and possibly growing, okay? And after it passes the sun, kind of really start the stuff that you've already kind of gained intuition of stuff you should let go from the sun. You should really start emotionally detaching from these things as well, okay, when moon gets there. Now, when moon kind of passes the sun and gets more towards the end of Scorpio. Now, one other thing I did want to mention is the moon and the sun, the new moon happens in the sign of Scorpio in the D1. However, in the D60 chart, the new moon also occurs in Scorpio, okay? And in the D9 chart, the sun technically is right at the beginning of Sagittarius, but the moon kind of crosses through Scorpio right up until the new moon, which happens in Sagittarius. And like I said, Sagittarius also has a lot to do with that, higher learning as well. And like I said, before that happens, the moon is in Scorpio also in the D9. But especially at the D60, the new moon happens in Scorpio as well, which is where both of these signs are in the D1. So this makes this thing even more powerful, okay? So that means not only at a superficial surface level this is occurring, but also at a deeper soul level this is occurring, okay? So that means all the advice I'm telling you, especially the spiritual stuff, is very important, okay? Accept the mind for the way it is, okay? Just learn to not rely on your true soul contentment from your mind, okay, or your ego. Rely on just the higher consciousness. Pursue more. Don't pursue making your mind or your ego happy, okay? Pursue just having stronger connection with the higher consciousness and realizing the truth, okay? And the true soul truth that, like, you know, that we're all just made up of higher consciousness, okay? And that, you know, the material world is an illusion, and that kind of stuff, okay? The material things are not really going to give us anything, nor is mental satisfaction and ego satisfaction. They're both all very temporary, okay? So, like I said, I hope you guys kind of learned a lot from this video. I'm going to make another video on just the sun and moon part of it and kind of how their journey affects one another, okay? But I hope this video was I explained enough of that in this short time just so you can understand a little bit of it so you can utilize this transit properly, okay? So if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know. And until next time, thank you. I appreciate you guys watching.